Nature at its best is nature at its simplest. At Red Barn, we've kept it simple for 20 years by concentrating on single-ingredient natural dog treats. Because Mother Nature's actually pretty good at this. Bones are just tasty bones. Meat treats are just nourishing meat. It's nature at its simplest. Look at the label. We want you to. Red Barn Natural Treats. Simply the best. Find it in your local pet specialty store. Try our slow-roasted, natural meaty bones.
You're listening to the Good Radio Network, radio that does a world of good.
Have you ever met one of those people who just can't be stopped? It's like they're unstoppable.
Yeah, I have.
Me too. What's their mystique?
Nothing stops these people.
Don't stop.
Welcome to Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso. You're about to meet some of the most amazing people. They've accomplished their goals despite insurmountable odds. They beat adversity, physical hardship, and traumatic events, and emerged triumphantly. They're people just like you and me, and they're winners. Are you unstoppable? Here's Frankie to show you how.
Well, good morning and welcome to Mission Unstoppable. Today we're going to go on another Mission Unstoppable, but first I want to say hi, welcome back. I haven't been on Mission Unstoppable for a couple of years, and I'm pretty excited to be back here, so lots of fun ahead. I'm going to explain to you what a Mission Unstoppable is, and I'm going to do that through a little story. A few weeks ago, I went to see a great new movie. It was called Everest. Maybe you've seen it. I saw the movie Everest at Landmark Cinemas in IMAX, and you know how much I love movies because sometimes I go twice a weekend. And I thought after seeing this movie two things. One, now that was a great movie, excuse me, and two, why on earth would anyone climb that beast, not once, but so many times? I mean, it's crazy. The area above 26,000 feet is called the death zone. And you're actually dying while you're there. Your body is killing itself. It's crazy. And for some reason, these people go there. And they have to go with fresh oxygen and their canisters because they're actually at the altitude where a 747 cruises. Okay? Craziness, really. So in this movie, Rob Hall, he's a climber, and he was the first guy to popularize guided Everest climbs. So his company, Adventure Consultants, took people up to the peak. And sometimes they had to go up a few times before they actually made it. And knowing that this is one of the most dangerous places on Earth, why do people do this? So, today there's about 216 frozen bodies lying up there, and they'll be there for eternity. They're dead, obviously. But these are all the people who had in their psyche this mission unstoppable. They were going to do it no matter what. So that's the first clue about what a mission unstoppable is. It's a mindset that, few individuals have. You might think Olympic athlete. But it doesn't mean that everybody can't do this. Everybody has the ability to go on their own mission unstoppable. And when I first started the show back in 2007, one of my first guests was also a mountain climber, and he climbed the 7 highest peaks of 7 islands in the world. His name was Nigel Vardy. And he ended up having all of his fingers, all of his toes, and his nose amputated because of frostbite. He was stuck up on Mount McKinley in Alaska in May of 1999, and he had the helicopter rescue from over 19,000 feet, which was at the time stated as the highest in North American history for recovery. And months after he came back, he went back to climbing. Now, like I said, not every mission unstoppable has to be dangerous, though many of us go on it daily. We're so determined to make our dreams and goals and desires come true that nothing is going to stop us. And I know nothing's going to stop you either. And today, I can't think of a more difficult mission than recovering from drug addiction. Sometimes you have to give up something to get something even better. And for me, I would say that giving up drugs and gaining freedom would mean everything to me because freedom is my number one value. And it carries through everything that I do in life. I'm an entrepreneur because I like to work for myself. In my relationship, my husband and I both share the same value of freedom. I don't tell you what to do, and you don't tell me what to do. And I like being free of vices. I gave up smoking and drinking. It's just something about me. But I believe it's important to know what your value or what you value and what your values are. And so today, if you go to the goodradionetwork.com website and go to a blog, I posted a list of values so that you can kind of figure that out for yourself. So there's a chart there, and you would start with your top 10, and then you could narrow that down to your top 5 values. And once you know them, you can live your life in alignment with them. So can you imagine cutting the tether from that which keeps you a slave? I mean, making changes is difficult, very difficult, especially ones that are habitual. And addiction is even more so. And if you're someone who has tried time and time again to change their life, recover from any addiction really, be it drugs or sex, food, gambling, you know how painful it can be. And today I'm going to speak to a gentleman who is going to tell us about the most fun way you'll ever have to go through recovery from drug addiction. Really, you say fun? Well, yeah, I think so. So stay tuned and stay close because you're not going to want to miss this. My guest today is Ryan Brannon, and he's an entrepreneur behind an amazing technological breakthrough that is truly revolutionary for the recovery community, and he says especially for younger people. My New Leaf is the name of his company. It's a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, and it's comprised of 8 students from Indiana University of Penn State University, and Carnegie Mellon. And these 8 have combined their skills and their degrees in information sciences, information assurance, gaming, sound engineering, communications media, graphic arts, journalism, and business management to bring this vision to life. And believe it or not, Ryan Brannon graduated just this past May, magna cum laude from Indiana University of Pennsylvania, with a major in management information systems and a minor in information assurance. Now, after switching tracks in college from pharmacy to MIS, Ryan conceptualized this novel way to help people seeking recovery through the use of internet-enabled tools. And he is known among his peers as an ambitious dreamer. You have to be. A connector, a motivator, and he is self-described privacy activist. And we're going to talk to him about just what that means. And his passions revolve around software development, cybersecurity, and social entrepreneurship. And his father tells me that he's a really great guy. But that's not all. So let's welcome Ryan. Hi, Ryan. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Frankie. Thank you so much for having me on.
You know, you really got on your own mission, Unstoppable, to create this app. I mean, tell us right from inception to where you are now. What's been going on? How did you come up with this, and why?
Well, after my shift from pharmacy school to the more computer science-y kinds of things, I had witnessed along that pharmacy track a lot of friends start to use and then subsequently abuse prescription pain medications and then ultimately become full-blown heroin addicts. And so much so that by the time I left that program, I was leaving behind a lot of friends who are now heroin addicts.
Wow.
And I felt like I left them behind. I felt like
did they actually get the drugs there at school, or like how did they become heroin addicts?
They were working as pharmacy technicians, and so several of them would steal pills regularly, take a couple from every kind of opiate, every kind of benzo. There's a lot of kinds out there, so they would have a full grab bag every week and distribute them at first, but then as it progressed, they just held on to them for themselves because they're so expensive, and then they slowly just descended into heroin as it's pretty much 1/4 the cost to acquire. So these were people in my pharmacy program that were doing these things, coming from middle-class homes, good upbringings, not the stereotypical cliche, junkie that you might picture when you think of a drug addict.
I have to ask you this just for a second. Now, when you go into the pharmacy program, is there some kind of a screening process? Because they know this is going to happen, right? They must.
I did not have to do any sort of screening. Maybe on an individual employer basis, there may be some sort of test, but I never worked as a pharmacy technician myself, so I'm unaware of anything like that.
Wow. Okay.
But basically, I had always been a guiding light for them. I had my own history of using some illegal drugs and experimenting the first year, but I stopped when I realized how quickly it was progressing and how much more they were using, and I then became more of their helper in crisis situations than anything. I would come to their aid or in any sort of situation where they needed help. And when I left, I felt like I had left them behind and left them high and dry. And when I looked out there at the market, at what was out there for people using this kinds of technology, I saw that there was really nothing substantial. There were some things that provided you some information, and sure, that's all well and good. They provided you some maybe mindfulness techniques. That's nice to have, but nothing that would really be utilized on a long-term basis that would actually promote substantial behavioral change. They were just like throwaway apps that you could use a couple times and then you would be done with them. They were so thin, there was nothing that you could chew on. And so that was my mission. I first came up with the idea that I wanted to create an app that not only provides you with help as to when to seek outside treatment, because addiction is so abstract. You never really know when you're crossing that next threshold or when it's starting to become a problem. So I wanted to help quantify that and help put metrics in place so that you know when it's time, but also where to turn, because there are just so many different paths to recovery, and everyone recovers in their own way. And I wanted to offer the multiplicity of different ways that they can seek help, and just keep trying other methods, because they just have to find one that works.
Right. And so depending upon personality, you would, just like in learning something, you would recover in a different way from somebody else. Not all programs are one.
It's a
like
discovery process.
Are one. Right.
And they just have to find what elements suit their beliefs and suit their motivations to actually bring about that positive behavioral change.
Right.
But what really got me going on this was as soon as I transferred, almost I'd say months into the computer science realm, they had a Shark Tank competition at my local university, at Indiana University, Pennsylvania. And that is where I was like, okay, I really need to try to put this vague, abstract idea of this app into something concrete that I can pitch. And I had about a week to do so. So I was really scrambling to make it something cohesive and that made sense and that drew on some good principles. And I did. And I did the pitch. And not only did I win the first place prize from the judges, but I also won the Audience Choice Award.
Oh, wow. And you won $10,000, I think, didn't you?
Yeah.
How much did you win? Was it 10?
Well, for the Shark Tank competition, that was around $1,000, but I also got 6 months in an incubator, and that's when I really started to pull together a team, and they were friends at that point. They were all just friends from various functional departments that were all extremely talented at what they did. And so we started working on this and hashing out the design and figuring out what really needs to be in there. And we worked for about six or 8 months just on the design phase, and we were just doing it all for God and country. We had no money, nothing to keep us going. And that's when we won a PASHI business plan competition. And that's all across the state of Pennsylvania. All of the state schools can compete in this. So there were probably a few hundred applicants. And that is what awarded us the $10,000. And that was so crucial in becoming the cornerstone for being able to actually pay the people that have been putting in all of this effort and all of this time. And not only that, they were graduating now at that point. So I'm having team members that are now graduated and need money to put food on the table. So it really helped keep the team afloat. And
are they sticking around? Are they going to stick around, or do they need to stay? Like, do you need all 8 still?
Oh, definitely. They're now at various points they all work more or work less depending on how much they're needed. but they're all so committed to the project and passionate about what we're doing, and that's part of the reason I chose these people, is because they had these ties to this area and a desire to bring about change.
So can I ask you, why did you? No, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just, because they were seeing it too. These are people that have lost friends and loved ones
Sure.
and family to it, so they all have an intricate tie to drug addiction, and want to see things change.
Now, you obviously, you and your friends have a good sensibility, about social consciousness and social impact of an organization. And can you tell me why you chose a nonprofit versus a B company, let's say?
That's a really good question. We kicked that around for a long time, like months, whether to go nonprofit or not. Mm-hmm. And there were pros and cons to both. Obviously, nonprofits make it significantly harder to get investors, and because you can't have investors. But it does open the door to things like grants and state and federal money for these kinds of projects. But ultimately, it just felt wrong being a for-profit company making money on others' misery and hardship. And I since this is going to be a free service, I really it felt ethically right to just go the nonprofit route.
Okay, good for you. That's awesome. People talk about the future of this world, and I have to say that when I meet young people like you, Ryan, and your friends, I have no doubt that we're all in good hands. We leave this world, to better stewards, I think, than we were.
Well, it's just definitely a problem that needs addressing. It's only getting worse, I think, especially in the young people age cohort. It's like quadrupled in the past, 4 or 5 years. So it's really something where we need to put more efforts to curb this epidemic. Because
so is it all opiates that is the big problem? Is that the drug of choice, or?
I would mainly say that, in our area, especially the Northeast United States, also known as like the Appalachian states, have the most profound heroin epidemic and prescription painkillers in the whole of the United States. And we're seeing overdose deaths skyrocket, whether it be from accidental overdoses or heroin that's laced with fentanyl. It's just getting worse and worse every year. And
now, are these street drugs, or are these coming from a doctor? Like, what's going on? How come it's so high?
Well, from what I hear when I speak to people in recovery and people who are addicts themselves, it often just starts out with being prescribed an opiate, whether it's hydrocodone or Percocet or even stronger stuff if you're in severe pain like oxycodone. But then it gradually becomes morphs into the heroin addiction that takes over. But the real overdose deaths come in at generally the heroin level, which are the street drugs.
Street drug.
And that's when it's most of the time cut with other legal substances like fentanyl, which is trying to help wean you off, but it's also a really common cut for heroin.
Wow. That's pretty scary.
Actually, I just had another friend pass away to an overdose a few days ago. So it's very fresh in my mind, but as tragic as it is, it really only serves to harden and further my resolve to get this app out there and to try to help others before even more deaths happen.
Well, I can certainly see that young people, everybody today, they are tethered to their cell phones. They're tethered to their devices. And so having an app is, probably brilliant. And after speaking to groups of people about, what's going to be coming down the pipeline to them, what is the kind of reception that you're getting from people in recovery?
Well, I went around for about a year asking for feedback and showing them my design, and talking with not only people in recovery and addicts, but also doctors, thought leaders, experts, psychiatrists, about what needs to be included. And the feedback I've gotten was always resoundingly positive. They were always like, why can't we have this now? I wish I would have had this after I leave the doors of rehab, because I just feel like I'm left on my own again with nothing to turn to. And you're just presenting it in such a way that will make it fun and make it engaging, and all the while it keeps it personal, because your digital identity is something that you manage and it's yours alone. So it gives you that sense of privacy, and it allows for you to communicate truthfully without feeling judged or without feeling any shame in what you're saying.
And this is where this advocacy for privacy comes in?
Absolutely. Now, I've been, like I said, I've been pushing for better digital privacy rights since before this project even started, because we've witnessed a gradual degradation of our online privacy, and it doesn't happen in leaps and bounds. It just is small incremental steps, but it's building towards something that's more nefarious in nature. And so one of the things I did was go to a prestigious software developers conference in the UK that was specifically about trying to find new ways to monetize apps and to create the next generation of apps that don't sustain themselves by selling the data of their clients. A business practice that's known as corporate surveillance, and pretty much all of the major tech companies do it. Apple does it, Google does it, Microsoft, Oracle, they all do it. They're selling data not only to other companies and advertisers, but they're selling it to governments, they're selling it to law enforcement. There's just no respect for the individual's data at that level. And the tenets of the conference, and ironically enough, I signed the Declaration of Software Independence in the UK on July 4th. So,
oh wow, that's great.
The declaration just promised that the next generation of tools would not only let the data be in the hands of the user. It means three things. That users would be able to control what they post, so people can't speak on your behalf, which seems obvious enough. Users would control how long it lasts, so it's not being stored indefinitely on some server farm out anywhere. They can control how long it lasts. And lastly, who can see it, so that, like I said, it's not being sold off to people whom you've never met before, who you don't want to see that data. And if you can adhere to those three things, then you have a much more private, secure kind of app that doesn't infringe on the privacy and doesn't capitalize on the privacy of your users.
Yeah, and if you think that this isn't true, the phone company used to do that. Back in the day when everybody had a home phone, Bell Telephone. I signed up Bell Telephone in my dog's name, and my dog was receiving credit card applications. She was, she had like a $30,000 limit.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah.
And they swear that they didn't do it, right?
Phone providers are notoriously bad for that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it looks like Dr. Kuniak's with us. How about I just see if that's him? Sorry. Hi, is this Dr. Kuniak?
Yes. Hi.
Hi. How are you? Welcome.
Good. How are you?
Good. My name's Frankie. And you're calling into Mission Unstoppable Radio, and you know that you're here with Ryan from My New Leaf. Dr. Kuniak, you are a practicing clinical psychologist. Is that correct?
Technically, clinical counselor.
Okay.
It's a just sort of a nuance of the degrees, but the fundamental theories are the same, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And I think what makes you interesting is that you did your undergrad research in geek culture and the effect of exposure to fantasy heroes on resiliency. That's very interesting.
Thanks. Yeah, I tell people when I meet them, I've been a geek since I was, 3 years old. So, and I think I grew up okay. So I think it's kind of interesting that.
What's your definition of geek? Give us your definition of geek.
Yeah, so a geek, I think, is someone who is particularly passionate about some area of interest in their life, and specifically for me, being a geek means that passion sort of surrounds things like comic books, fantasy, science fiction, video gaming. I include video gaming as a part of being a geek, but there are people who would separate that. Folks who are just identifying themselves as gamers or are identifying themselves as neither, but like both of these avenues. But for me, it's all kind of under the same umbrella, for myself at least.
Ryan, you're in information technologies. Do you have an action figure of somebody from Star Wars sitting anywhere near your desk?
Oh, of course I do. I still have all of my figurines from back when I collected them, and truth be told, I still play with them.
You know what? When I used to work for the government, and every IT guy I knew had a Star Trek figure near his desk.
It's not uncommon at all. I certainly have them all over my counseling office.
So you two came together how? There's a marriage here somehow. How did it happen?
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead, Ryan, and give your end of it?
You can take it away. You met my father before you actually met me.
Yeah, so I had founded my own nonprofit 501c3 charitable organization, and the goal was to provide opportunities to try to gather funding and things of that sort to kind of further this research agenda that I have. And so I do these events a couple times a year with two of my colleagues who are also part of my organization. And we do basically little mini sort of Comic-Con, gaming cons in the local area out here in, out towards Pittsburgh. And so I've been trying to figure out new ways to advertise these events because event organization is not my forte. I do the mental health thing, so party planning is not something I do a lot of. But so in trying to figure it out and trying to make these events be both geek and gaming oriented, but then also tie it into my belief that there are healthy aspects to this culture. In fact, that really there can be the strong fostering of resiliency in these social groups that organize around this. I started to reach out to some of my mental health colleagues, and actually there's a gentleman named Tim Phillips who knew and knows Ryan's father. And so when I had sent my information out to Tim, I got this email from Ryan's dad, Ray, saying, "Hey, Tim mentioned this stuff that you're involved with. I really want to talk to you." And so, talked to Ray for a little bit, and Ray connected me with Ryan's organization here, and certainly his really remarkable app that they're working on, which is, designed around gaming in many ways. So,
right.
So that's how we kind of got to know each other.
Okay, so you're in because of gamification, you're in because of your background in psychology and addiction? Is that fair to say, or is it? Okay.
Yeah, so that's the roundabout way for how we got connected, and then certainly it just seemed to click. It's interesting that we had never really met before, given these parallel sort of processes that we were working through.
Yeah, so. Interesting. But the world works in mysterious ways, and so does Ray Brannon. I have to think.
Yes, he does.
Yeah. So give us. Oh man, I got so many places I want to go, but I do want to talk about the gamification because that's a word that is new. I think kind of a lot of people may not know what it is anyway. So let's talk about that, and then I want to go back to the neuroplasticity of the brain.
Sure. All right. Well, I'll pick up on gamification because it's something I love to talk about. It's really just come around in the past 5 years. It's never really been uttered before, so it's definitely a hot new word. It basically means taking video game-like elements and putting it into something that's not itself a video game.
Okay.
And so you're not playing a game when you're playing the app. It still has a lot of tools, information, and resources for you to utilize, but it has these video game-like elements, and these are things like badges and leveling up and points and achievements and rewards, all of the things that make video games fun.
Okay.
I believe someone once said,
that.
yeah, exactly. And someone once said, video games are just like opening up boxes. You're constantly just opening up one box after another, hoping for something good to be in it, and that's what makes them so fun. There's that element of randomness and uncertainty, and that's what keeps people engaged and coming back on a daily basis. And that's where I really think that gamification can play a huge role in behavioral modification, just because of the longitudinal effect that it'll have on you if with consistent use. And that's why things like MyFitnessPal worked for so many people. It's not because the tools were inherently better than their competitors. It's that they made it more fun, more easy to get involved, and ultimately more engaging, so that you would keep coming back to it and keep using it. It gave you that motivation and incentive to keep trying and keep on your efforts. And all of those things that I'd mentioned about the video game elements will be in the app. You'll have an avatar that starts as a seed, and that as you gain points, it'll be leveling up into a sprout and ultimately into a tree that you can decorate with custom icons, and so that your avatar is customizable. Because our digital identities, like I said, are very important to us. They've become a vital extension of ourself. And not only that, they're easier to manage than our interpersonal identity. These are things that we craft, that we put a lot of thought and effort into how we want it to look. People don't just post Facebook statuses that they're not proud of. You post things that you are proud of, and so you're constantly crafting this identity in a manner that's so much more easy and more accessible than an interpersonal kind of communication.
So I just wanted to let me go back to the little leaf bud seed idea. Because at the beginning of the show, we talked about the different personalities and the way that each, we're all individual and would respond in a new and different way. So would these seedlings be, I would pick the one I want based upon what avatar I like, or is it based on personality? Is there some kind of, do I have to do a little questionnaire and they'll say, oh, you're an oak or something?
That's you're kind of on the right track. When they would pick a seed, we have about 12 of them to choose from. It's going to have the seed on a little card, and it'll give you a little profile of what that, if you choose this, what that reflects of your personality. So maybe if you're picking the Japanese maple tree, you have an exotic, maybe an independent and kind of traits, whereas if you pick a palm tree, you're clearly more laid back, subdued, and
you get to read through all of them first?
Yes, and then pick the one that you click with. Again, this is just
click
enhancing.
And they go, you are this.
It just enhances the bond that you feel with that avatar, and creates that the interconnection that keeps you motivated to better that avatar.
Here's a question, Steve. As a recovering addict, and I pick up this app, and I'm like, man, I'm so depressed because I know I got to get off this stuff. It's killing me. It's killing my family. Everything is, but I'm so flippin' depressed. Can I see myself as an exotic anything?
Sure. I mean, I think. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
It doesn't matter. Whoever.
So,
where I'm coming from, though.
Yeah, I think that even in a state of depression, people still have an ideal image of themselves. It may be hard to access and it may be hard to personalize, and I think that's where Ryan is right, that even if so like even when I create an avatar when I'm gaming or something like that, I try to make it resemble myself to some degree, but then I have a certain amount of liberty that I can take with adding things that I would prefer, maybe. So
make yourself slimmer.
Yeah, whatever the case may be, or you can play around with that idea, and I think there's something in some ways healing about that. We always have this real self and ideal self, and
right.
Psychological theory would say that the difference between those two is where we get things like anxiety, because the greater the dissonance between the real and the ideal, it creates discomfort. And so, if you want to change, if you have this burning desire to change, I think that creating something like an avatar gives you an opportunity to explore what would I want to be, or how did I see myself?
Mm-hmm.
What would I like to? And so I think reading through the tree examples makes sense for.
Okay.
I'm not a Japanese maple right now, but I'd like to be. I used to be. I remember I was, and I think that creates an amount of incentive to say, this is the self that I'd like to be, so how do I get there then? And so there's a personal investment in the process that comes in. That's the one beautiful thing about gamification. And again, Ryan was dead on with his examples there. I do some teaching. I'm a part-time professor, and certainly I'm always looking to get into higher ed much more closely. But gamification is finding its way in the classroom all the time, and part of the reason is because when you are engaging something that is like a game, or is a game for that matter, but something that works off of the framework of a game, it requires that you be an active participant, and you're willingly participating. And wouldn't that be wonderful in every classroom in America if every student came in and basically pressed start to play, that they were actually saying, I want to play, I want to be a part of this. So in Avatar, you're doing that. You're volunteering yourself to, okay, I'm going to do this thing. And it's a step in investment.
I'm interested, though, in gaming on its own, just for 1 second, because you raised a question. My background is in hypnotherapy. So as I choose my avatar, and this is maybe, my fantasy self, who I'd really like to be, and maybe I want to stay there longer because my real self I don't like. So I'm just going to stick with my fantasy self for days on end. Our subconscious, all the stuff that's in our subconscious that says, you're not good enough and you're not smart enough and you're not any of this stuff. How does that play into gaming?
So that's a really great question, and I think it's kind of multifaceted, so I'm thinking about how I want to direct through that. So, that's the part that I think a lot of people are concerned with regard to gaming. It's the, do you check in and then never check back out? And certainly there's a lot of desire for that. I think that's where there are writers out there, there are researchers out there like Jane McGonigal, for example. I don't know if you've ever come across her book, Reality is Broken.
No.
It talks about how people are moving in droves into virtual worlds, and then it becomes our responsibility as kind of the folks who are the professionals looking at this to help them take what it is they're learning in those virtual worlds and turn it into real-life successes. And so that's where I think, in talking to Ryan and Ray about where they're going with some of this stuff, I like the idea that there are these virtual rewards in the app, and then additionally I like the idea that they have some real physical rewards, like workbooks and things like that will come
in the real world. So you tether them to the real world, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what happens with certain games and things like that too. Like I don't know what you play or if you play, but I'm a big Xbox gamer, and Ryan can attest to this because I talk about it every time we meet up. But Halo, my favorite game of all time, Halo, is coming out with a new rendition of itself here in just a few weeks. And you can buy the regular game, but if you upgrade, you can get physical components to that game, like books or figures or things like that. And again, I think that's where game design, where game developers are saying, there is this desire to attach real-world components to in-game content, so that there is that back and forth. And so I think there's,
there's an
opportunity there.
Is there a personality type that likes games other than being a geek? Like, is there, like, I don't play games. I mean, I don't play, I mean, I might play poker, but I don't play, I don't know, like Nintendo or Mario or any of that. Like, my kids love it, but I just doesn't interest me. So is there a personality type? I mean, I like rewards. I do that thing. But
my doctoral research was actually on sort of identifying gamer personality types.
Okay.
And I didn't specifically look at gamer versus non-gamer personality types, but I know that there are, my thinking of it is it has to do with, I think, individuals who are comfortable around that medium. So like you said, there are certain things that you like that you can see that your kids also like, but in the game world, I think it's a very similar sort of thing where the generations that are popping up now, this is just a way of life. This is a thing that we do. And so they're finding these aspects of their personality that maybe would have been picked up in other activities pre, this revolution of video gaming. Now they're finding them in gaming. And
I got one more question. And I need to get these in. I'm sorry, I have to cut you off. And then I really want to go back to Ryan to, let's finish off the app and everything that it's going to do. But oh man, what was it? I almost lost it. Did I lose it? Oh, it'll come back. Okay. Hopefully it'll come back because it was kind of important. But okay, so we've got the gaming aspect. We've got real life rewards that are going to come from this. We've got written into this app, stop me if I'm incorrect, there is a way for people to find real help in their area. And what else is in it?
All right, so I could boil down a lot of the app. There's going to be a lot of different things they can do and tools they can use, but it boils down to a couple things. One is the daily facets. And that is just a behavioral monitoring tool that checks up on a wide variety of different physical, mental, and emotional health states. And they rate themselves on a daily basis. And we compare that data to their previous use, and we can see where they're falling behind or maybe getting ahead in whatever facet they may be. So say they have been rating themselves poorly for depression the past few days, and they don't have a history of that, then we can specifically fine-tune the feedback to automatically push to them information regarding how to deal with depression. And that goes for any of the other different behaviors or behavioral monitoring facets, that we can just gear that personalized feedback so that it's actually hitting on issues that they're struggling with.
So if it came back that they were worried about that person, would it push out, here's a phone number for a hospital or something?
Not quite. That's a different function, but I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay, sorry.
Another part of the daily facets is a daily journal, and from that journal, we'll parse through what they're talking about, and it could be anything: what they're going through, what their day's been like, any struggles they've had. We'll parse through it to find keywords. And those keywords would relate to what their motivations are, because one of the guiding ideologies of this app is that of motivational interviewing and motivational incentives. These are two newer age psychotherapy tools that are used to deal with addiction. And basically, what those two therapies involve is just getting to the bottom of what is motivating them to use drugs and what is motivating them to recover, be it financial, social, or biological motivations. And so from that journal, we'll parse through what they're saying to see what is really driving them for change. For instance, so say someone enters into the journal, I went into work high today. My boss knew it, and he said he would fire me if I came in high again. And I know I won't be able to find another job, and I won't be able to pay the bills. And I'm starting to get anxious about that. then clearly they have a lot of financial motivations at play. They're not really worrying about what it's doing to their health. They're not really worrying what it's doing to their intimate social circles. So then we fine-tune that motivation feedback to touch on that, because obviously if we're giving them information about the biology about it that they don't even care about, it's not going to be having an impact. But if we're touching on the finances involved, then that will have a much more profound impact on their motivations.
How might you touch on that finance? What would that look like?
Well, it could be in the form of a cost calculator to see how much, maybe you're using in a day, how much you'd save if you cut back or if you went abstinent. And this just reinforces that motivation that they have. Oh, yeah, I do need to restrict my money usage. So this really could work. Even if I just cut back on what I'm doing, I'd save that much money.
That's really clever. Good for you.
The other major component of this app is the panic button. And the panic button is going to be a big red button at the bottom of every screen. It's always accessible. And it's just to be used in crisis situations. So whether they're depressed or suicidal, or they're about to use, or maybe even someone just overdosed right beside them, this offers a whole bunch of different features for them to reach out in that moment. I'm just going to quickly go through some of the features that we'll offer in the panic button. One would be a geolocated hotline for the more dire situations. If they're suicidal or if an overdose occurred, then they can get directly in touch with a hotline who will accommodate them with the most appropriate resource. But they can also do a quick journal, which they can write what they're going through. We'll give them the best piece of feedback that we have to help them combat that issue. There's motivational scripts, which are both motivational tips and pre-written by doctors, and just something for them to grab onto and draw strength from in that moment, just as a source of inspiration or a kick in the pants or whatever it may be that they need. It would just be something for them to hold on to. Another thing is we're calling it the recovery circle, and this is where you can assign people from your contacts to be in your recovery circle. You can have up to 5. And then when you tap on it, it'll show you the 5 different avatars for the different people, and you can tap on one of their avatars, and then it'll pop up with 2 options. Call me, I need a distraction, or come pick me up. And if you press either of those, it'll automatically send that text message to that person. For the come pick me up, it will also attach a GPS location. The purpose of this is that you can be discreet, so that if you're in a social situation and you know that it's heading down a bad road, that you can, within 2 or 3 taps, have someone on their way exactly where you are, even if you're in the middle of an alley. So it's that kind of instant, discreet communication with people that you know and trust. Call it your sponsor, mentor, whatever it may be. These are the people that you trust intimately, even in those dire situations. And lastly, perhaps most interestingly, there's a function called the beautiful web, and the idea behind it is I've been compiling a list of beautiful mobile and web experiences that serve as motivation, inspiration, or just pure engagement. These are things that I'm hoping to be a distraction. The normal drug craving persists normally for about 15 minutes in its intensity and then starts to subside. So if we can distract them long enough for that 15 minutes, then afterwards rational thought will take back over. So included will just be fun little mini games, fun surveys and inspiring talks, motivating videos, and all sorts of things that hopefully can bring them out of that moment long enough for that rational thought to take back over. And you spoke to us including all of the different rehabs, counselors, and self-help groups in the area. And how that's going to be represented is actually how we monetize it. It's going to be advertisements throughout the app on a regular basis, but they're just not going to be any random ads. They're going to be localized ads for the services available in your area. And that could be anything from an NA group to an addiction counselor to a rehab facility. So they have these tools at their thumbs if they have learned that they've crossed that threshold and need to reach out for outside treatment. Then they have all of those different ones to look into and tap into if need be.
That's fantastic. Reminds me a little bit of my guest last week with Fabric, and she had a running app like that, kind of where there's a panic button and it tells you where. It's great. It's great. I mean, all of that is great. Are you going to vet any of these facilities for people?
Excuse me, say again?
Are you going to vet any, even though they're paying money? Would you be interested in vetting them to make sure that they're good or know what they're talking about? Have good recommendations?
That would probably be down the line. Right now, we're really just trying to secure some agencies and some rehabs just to be our alpha market and to be our alpha test advertisers, so we can actually hammer out the details of the advertising system. But ideally, I would like to have some safeguards in place so that we're not just sending them to terribly ineffective places. And
so this idea, I think I read somewhere in one of your literature, is that in young people using this kind of application expands their brain. Did I read that correctly?
We're really tapping into the research of neuroplasticity, which is still in its infancy, and the applications of which are still in its infancy. People always just immediately think of lumosity and then kind of discredit it as that's just a bunch of bull, but it has really true and profound effects. And not only that, it's having more profound effects on younger generations. I recently saw a study that the millennials' brains are about 50% more neuroplastic than previous generations. And I believe it's just because we have spent our entire life with devices. We know that technology is helping us, so we allow it to change our thought patterns and we allow it to change our behaviors more freely. And so it's opened up our brain to the malleability that technology can then shape. And that's again where gamification comes into play. This is something that really piggybacks on neuroplasticity because it in itself is a model of neuroplasticity. We love games and the engagement, and so we're bringing it into other things just because of how it rewards our brains, how it lights up those centers for rewards, and ultimately it makes things more successful.
I think Ryan and Steve, I think two things. One is that people at my age, like after 50s, I remember when they first came out and computers first came out, and young people, they have no fear, but we were always like, oh, don't do anything wrong. Don't break it. We have this fear that we're going to do it wrong. And so we're not relaxed players, let's say. When you first start, I'm a techno geek myself. I mean, I'm a Gemini, man. I have to have everything. I've got 3 iPads going, but all different kinds. But I know that there's a fear of, am I going to break it if I touch this key? Am I going to do something wrong, right? And that's a difference. Children learning and adults learning in anything. Like I think your dad. You're a drummer, right? Are you a drummer or one of your brothers? I'm a drummer too. And when I remember first playing my kit, and as I was older, I wasn't young when I learned, so it was always, oh, I'm going to do that wrong. I don't want to hit that because I might do it wrong. And I think that's something that prevails from adults versus kids, they don't worry about doing it wrong. They're just going to do it. Let me get in there and mess it up, right?
And,
so I think,
in addition to that, I think there's kind of been a cultural or a paradigm shift where we promote the breaking, and as more people are becoming just casual hackers, where they know how things work and can take it apart and put it together and splice different pieces together, it's becoming a mainstream thing to be able to break things and want to explore how things work. Half the time via breaking. So,
but this is my fear. Let me tell you my fear about millennial. And Steve, maybe you want to jump in on this too, because my husband and I were out to dinner. We see a family of 4. They've got mom and dad and 2 kids, 2-year-old and maybe an 18-month-old, sitting at a table. Mom and dad are each on their cell phone, playing or reading or doing whatever, texting, and all through dinner, not one of them spoke to their kids. So we're attached to this device, right? That is actually keeping us away from real people, because we're more interested in the fake people, or the online people.
Right, and I think your point's well taken there. I think that's the catch that we have to put out there, because I'm totally for use of electronic devices and gaming, and I'm huge advocate for that. However, I think additionally, it's just like anything else. I think there needs to be a balance. And so, especially with, younger kids, but when I was growing up, my parents would, they were totally okay with me gaming, so long as I also did other things too. So I was a Boy Scout, I'm an Eagle Scout, so I had to do the outdoor activities. And when we went on family vacations, the game system could come, but we had to spend the day out, and then the gaming was only useful, or being on electronic devices was only allowed after we had done, additional activities. And so
let's say your parents are today's 20-somethings. Today's 20-somethings are having kids, right?
Yeah.
Are those kids, who's talking to them? That's just my only fear.
I agree, and that's a little bit of where my research agenda is, and my nonprofit is I'm trying to kind of do that. I'm trying to present some outreach efforts to get people talking about this stuff, because I do think we need to have, you meet people online in games and stuff like that. We should meet them in safe environments after we've sort of checked that out.
But they kind of feel more real to people than the people who are really in their lives, right? Sometimes.
It can be, for sure. I definitely work with a couple of clients who are like that, who don't really know the difference between a friend in real life and a friend online. And so, I think that our biggest, the biggest support that we can have for this, or the biggest help we can have, is really education around it. Because we're dealing with technology that never existed before. We're really in. I was talking to someone, and I'm a huge sci-fi geek, if that hasn't already been clear, but my cell phone, my smartphone, is more advanced than what Captain Kirk was using on the Enterprise. And so so we have stuff that is just beyond what what the child psychologists and everything considered when they were first sort of looking into this stuff.
I've got a minute and a half left here. So,
sure.
Ryan, tell us, I'm sorry, Steve, to cut you off there.
No,
I shouldn't have asked that question, maybe. Last words, anything you want people to know? When is this available?
We are shooting for an alpha launch, so if you're interested in trying it out, totally free, just to be part of our alpha survey crew, by the end of the year. So soon after Christmas, we are hoping for it to be available on iOS. So that's for iPhone.
And they can reach you where?
You can find us on Twitter at @my_newleaf, or on Facebook.com/mynewleafrecovery.
Excellent. And you know what, Steve, we'll have to get you back on too, and we'll talk. There's so much to talk about. But you know what's really unfair is that vertebrates have this receptor for opiates. I mean, every one of us has this receptor that's like a perfect fit, right? It's like, and we have to break that, and that hurts. I'm sure it hurts a lot of people. Listen, My New Leaf. Make sure you go to My New Leaf and check out this amazing application and Dr. Kuniak, do you have a website for the geeks who want to help you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you take a look at Geek and Gamer Counseling Alliance, if you Google us, we're everywhere. We have Facebook, Twitter, all that as well. So certainly you can Google my name, Steve Kuniak, Kuniak, or Geek and Gamer Counseling Alliance, and you will definitely find us.
Thank you so much, everyone who's tuned in today. I so appreciate you. And Ryan Brannon and Steve Kuniak, thank you again for being my guest today. And we will see you next week for another Mission Unstoppable. Take care, everybody. Have yourself a wonderful day or evening wherever you are in the world. Bye now.